I'll tell you what, it's 7 o'clock. It's actually 7:03. Why don't we call the meeting to order?
Yeah.
And the first item on the agenda is a variance hearing. And so let's begin with the usual words, which are that a variance hearing from Board of Health Regulations is called to order for 58 River Road, I believe. It's my duty to inform the applicant that what you have to do is provide the Board of Health with data to support your request for a waiver of Board of Health requirements. And if you don't receive the waiver, it'll do you manifest injustice. You've also got to show us that what you intend to do is environmentally acceptable. So we have John Glossa from Glossa Engineering. I presume you are representing the applicant?
I am, Mr. Chairman.
Well, John, the floor is yours.
Okay, Mr. Chairman. So again, as you said, my name is John Glossa, Glossa Engineering, 46 East Street in East Walpole, and I was contacted by Robert Gilmore, Bob Gilmore, who he and his wife are the owners of the property at 58 River Road. And the septic system is failing. They've reduced, there he is.
Hi, Wade.
They've reduced their water use.
Sorry, John.
Yep, that's okay.
Right.
They've reduced their water use significantly. They're not doing laundry at the house, and they're, doing as many things as possible away from home to reduce the water usage. Unfortunately for them, this system was rebuilt, replaced in 2007. And in the same, wouldn't call it a problem, but the same condition existed back then. And that is that when they went to do the soil testing, they could do the soil testing and they could identify the type of soil, and they could look at the soil map and see the type of soil, but they could not do a perk test. And Wade could correct me if I'm wrong, but back then, I don't believe there was a procedure in place, a policy in place that is in place now by the DEP to help someone sort of muddle through what to do when you can't do a perk test and what to do when it looks like you're not going to be able to do a perk test for some time. So apparently they sort of followed the same protocol that we do now. They did a sieve analysis. It came back at sandy loam. And for some reason, they decided that that was akin to, I believe it was a 10-minute perk rate. And to me, I think that led to the system being undersized. Because today, when it comes back as sandy loam, it's akin to a 30-minute perk rate, not a 10-minute perk rate. So so that actually makes the system twice the size as the system that was installed in 2007, maybe 2008. The plans are from 2007. So we went out, did the same thing. We did some soil tests. You can see we did them in the front of the lot between the pavement and the existing leach bed that's there. Essentially, our leach bed you see shown on the plan is simply replacing that one that's already there. And it's already sort of what we call a pump and a hump. It's, kind of raised up above the ground. And there really isn't anywhere else on this site to place a leach bed. You can see we're 100 feet from the well that's to kind of a abandoned house, but it's still a well to the left side. And there's the Charles River is at the rear of the site. and we need to stay 50 feet from the bordering vegetated wetland that surrounds the Charles River. And there's also, in 2007, they abandoned the well for this property, and you can see where the water line is. So to sort of place this system anywhere else seemed to be, didn't make a lot of sense. So what will happen here is that that system, that leach bed will be removed, and then the new leach bed, which will be a Presby system, will replace it. So the other thing this plan shows is actually replacing the septic tank and the pump chamber. So when we compare our test pits and groundwater table elevation to what happened in 2007, or what was done in 2007, we find that the water table is probably a foot higher than what they predicted or what they established in 2007, and therefore the septic tank and the pump chamber, the piping coming in and out of them is now below the water table, and that's not allowed by Title V. What is allowed is, with your approval, is for this piping to be as little as 1 inch above the water table. So I asked for that waiver, and I also put a note on the plan suggesting that we should dig a hole, a test hole near those tanks, the septic tank and the pump chamber, and I'd rather do it sooner rather than later, and actually determine if in fact the water table at that location is or is not above the piping in and out of the tank and in and out of the pump chamber. The reason I'm asking for that is because, as you can see, the soil testing we did is up near the street. So it's a good 40 feet from those two tanks. So I just thought it would be prudent to ask for that. If you grant it and we do find that the piping is 1 inch or more above the groundwater table, then the existing tank and pump chamber, which were put in 2007, so they're not that old by concrete tank standards. Or so if it turns out that that is true, that it is 1 inch or more above it, then the existing tanks can stay, and that's going to save this family easily $10,000, because to replace that tank and the pump chamber, and probably you're going to replace the pump if you replace the pump chamber, but I'm not sure of that. But I mean, that's about $10,000. So that septic tank's about 4, and the pump chamber is about 6. So that's why I asked for that. And the other waiver is to not is to allow us to construct and design without the perk test. Again, we're following the DEP policy. I took 2 samples to Filch Engineering in Cranston, Rhode Island, who are a company that bought GZA. They do a lot of soil testing. They're sort of a big engineering company. And they came back with both of these samples as sandy loam. And that translates, as I said, into a 30-minute perk rate. I would guess even if we went out there today, the water table would be too high, because it was a wet fall and now a wet spring, and I think it'd be a long time before that water table is going to drop low enough here to do a perk test. So I think we meet the standard of providing the same environmental protections by using the DEP policy, and I think that you would be doing them manifest injustice. I don't know what they would do if, they would have to wait maybe until July or August or September before we could do a perk test. And as I said, they're not doing their laundry here now, and they're reducing their water. And I know that there's, at a minimum, a husband and a wife and 1 sibling, or 1 child. So, and there may be others. So, you'd be, making life difficult for them for the summer without this waiver from Title V. So I guess with that, Mr. Chairman, I can answer any questions that the board might have.
Thank you, John. So, Wade, it's your turn. Do you have anything to comment on?
Yeah, sure. And it might be helpful too. Everybody received my peer review. John and I have been going over this design for the last couple of days, almost about a week. We've been discussing about it, looking at the old design versus John's new design, and looking at the environmental conditions and what they recorded in the past, and what we found today. And I think our conversations are going forward for the best for the resident. We want the resident to have the best system in there. The system's only 13 years old or 12 years old. It's pretty young for a new system. And I had a couple of concerns regarding the existing design, and just let me go through it. To answer John's questions about what they did back in 2007 about the long-term acceptance rate, John, that 7 hours was the same back then it is today. So how they got that data, I don't really know. I wasn't there, so that's just history. When John and I went out there and did the site evaluation, the soil description was pretty much the same as landmarks, which was pretty good to see. 12 years apart, two different groups of people coming up with the same information. Even the groundwater depths are pretty much the same, only like inches apart from each other. The only difference between the plans were that I think there was an error in landmark that they, when they recorded the surface ground where the test holes were, they were off a foot. So if you take the elevation of the top of the test hole and you measure down to your groundwater, and that's how you get your elevation of your groundwater. So if his elevation of his test hole was in error, then the groundwater would be different. And I think that was the problem with that design, that no one caught it. Because John's plans using the same benchmark, the same elevations. And the only difference between the two plans are the surface ground where the test holes are. So I think that's the reason why the tanks were originally installed low. They really should have been up at least a foot higher. The only concern I have with the position of the tanks would be that if groundwater is intercepting inside the tanks, it's a pump system, and then the system would be receiving more water than it's really designed for. And that could be one of the possibilities why it was a premature failure to it, or maybe not. Looking at the last Title V report, it was last February 27th, 2020, the inspector, which has been around, so we know, I believe, I trust his opinion, he's been around quite a bit, inspected both the tanks and actually had a pretty good description of both of them. And when he looked inside the septic tank, he noticed, that was in February, that the water levels inside the tanks were operating at its normal levels, meaning that there wasn't water flooding it in, it wasn't overflowed with groundwater coming in. Because if groundwater is weeping through a tank, the tank is probably usually full or at the same level as the groundwater is. And when he examined the pump chamber, he didn't notice anything different. He didn't notice any water coming in. He noticed the pumps were working, operating properly. So he didn't notice, or he didn't note anything that groundwater was rushing into those two tanks. So with an observation on the inside of the tanks of last February, and this person being an objective viewpoint because he didn't know what we're talking about today, I feel pretty comfortable. Well, maybe we should examine the tanks to save the homeowners some money. The problem with that is if there's a higher groundwater season and water goes back into the tanks, they might get another short life of their septic system. So it's a gamble. Mr. Glosser wanted to go back and examine the soils next to the tanks, on the exterior of the tanks, to see if there's any modeling of groundwater evidence. And my remark to that was, well, it's disturbed now. They installed two tanks, the soil profile is all disturbed, so that's a difficult thing to do. But he wanted to do it on behalf of the homeowners to save them some money of installing the tanks. Now, looking at the numbers, and you can see in my report, the groundwater elevation that was determined during the last site evaluation is higher than the elevation of the as-built of the tank itself. So that could be a problem right there. Groundwater could be flooding that tank at times. We don't know, but looking at the numbers and looking at what we use today as a scientific evaluation of the land, technically those tanks are in groundwater at very high groundwater, at times when groundwater is at its highest, when the models are actually being used or actually being created. So that's going into this, I guess, this stew, this pot that you guys are looking at for a variance review, because we're going way off the sieve analysis, but we're looking more at tanks now. The tank seems to be the big thing in this variance, and also repair. And the question is, do you keep the existing tanks to save the homeowner money, or do you make them update it to John's new elevations where it's in compliance with Title V and where it would be an extra cost to them? The extra cost would also prevent any possibilities of a future premature failure, because groundwater won't have a chance of going into the tanks. I think that's about, I hope I didn't drag off too far, but if anybody has any questions, I'm here to answer.
Questions from the board? Fran or Eileen? Nothing now?
Well, I can stop.
Yeah, this is a quandary.
Yeah. I mean, either they put in the new tanks, it's gonna cost $10,000, or we grant them a variance and they take a risk that they'll have to replace the whole thing again down the road. Is that what you're saying? Is that what I'm hearing, Wade? Am I on or am I not on?
Yes, yes, but looking at the numbers, the exist. I'm hearing you.
Am I muted?
Nope.
No, we heard
Yes,
you.
that's basic what it is.
So-
Yeah, it's. No, you. Okay, I'll respond. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're frozen right now, but
Yes, I can
Can you
hear
hear me?
I can hear you, Wade.
I can hear you.
Okay. I'm not sure.
Right.
Okay, good. So, yeah, that's basically it. John suggested he wants to go out there and investigate the exterior of the tanks to see how groundwater is affecting those tanks at that position or that location in that property where we dug holes by the road itself. And John's guessing or assuming that the groundwater might be at a different elevation 40 feet away. I personally think it won't really matter because it's not that far away for groundwater to change. And with that type of soils, groundwater is not going to really change very much at a 40 feet or even 50 feet distance. Maybe if you had a building in between the two, it might have some effect to it. I'm not really sure, because if you let the variance go through and the tanks do accept groundwater and the system gets flooded out again, then in a couple 10 years from now, they'll be back for another variant, another upgrade. Or John could be correct, and the tanks could stay in the ground. It could last for another 15 years.
So, Mr. Chairman, that's all I'm suggesting. First of all, the Board of Health cannot grant a waiver or a variance for the tank piping to be underwater. It can only grant a variance down to 1 inch. So because it's 1 inch, that's what I put in my request. I just think it's prudent because of where the test pits were done to allow, if we can determine and if we're comfortable, let's say that the piping is 6 inches above the water table, to allow it to stay. Without the waiver, it has to be 12 inches above the water table. So that's Title V. So Title V, my design shows it 12 inches above the water table. That doesn't need a waiver. But what I'm saying is let's say I went out there and Wade and I were very comfortable that it was 6 inches or 4 inches above the water table. I'm just trying to avoid going back to the board and say, hey, you know what? We found out it's 4 inches, so we need this second waiver now, this second variant. That's all. I'm not, certainly if I go out there and determine, and Wade and I determine that the pipes are underwater, or that, the tanks are, being, there's problems with the tanks or something, then that's it. That's the end of it. Then we're putting in new tanks. I'm just trying to set it up to allow the opportunity to, leave the tanks if they are more than 1 inch and, above the water table, that's all. And since we did not at the time dig down near the tanks, I'm just trying to sort of avoid coming back. You could, kick the can down the road, because I think I am going to go back there and look. I think the water table right now is still, especially in till soils, as high as you're going to see it. So it could be a simple operation of just digging down with a small machine next to the tank, setting a monitor well, and just coming back in a few days and see what's going on. If the water table's above the piping, then that's the end of the story. If it's below the piping, then, Wade and I will have a conversation. If Wade says, nope, we're replacing the tanks, then we're replacing the tanks, so.
John, I have one question for you and Wade both, actually. If you go out there, you dig the holes, and you discover that the groundwater level is below the outlet, inlet structures, there's always the question of, well, is the timing right in this observation, or are we really still at something like a historical high water level? I mean, yeah, we had a very wet spring, but we didn't have all that wet a winter. And is there a possibility that we're not going to be looking at what would really be the maximum high groundwater for that particular site? How do you assess that or come to agreement on that topic?
Well, like I said, Wade sees a lot more test holes than I see, but right now what I'm seeing is that in till soils that the water table is as high as it would get in a springtime. So, that all, and I'm just looking for the opportunity to have the piping, less than 12 inches. If you decide tonight that, I guess you can decide that you want it 12 inches and that's the end of the story, but you could decide 6 inches and say, well, John, we don't want it 1 inch. We think that's too risky. How about 6 inches, or whatever you decide. I just was looking for an opportunity. The reason I did it, because I thought, and I probably didn't think correctly, that it could happen when they go to install the new leach bed, but I think that's going to be too far into, we're getting out of the high water season now. You can see the leaves are coming out on the trees and the grass is growing, so the water table is dropping. But so that's kind of how I set it up on the plan, but I think it would have to be done probably this week if we're really going to see the high water. And like I said, Wade might be seeing other places in till soils where the water table has dropped, but I have not seen that.
What do you think, Wade? Are we still pretty close to high groundwater?
Well, I would say that the groundwater is dropping. So you're seeing the tail end of high groundwater. Groundwater is dropping. That's why I push for the April 30th, end of April being high groundwater season.
Right.
And when the trees start blooming and the grass starts growing, the groundwater drops. They take tons of water. That's why models are used for groundwater determination. It's hard. I like helping out homeowners, but I think the error is made in original install. I believe the error is made when the original test holes were calculated or were marked as base being a foot lower. Because if you take the old design and you add a foot to their test holes, their test hole profile is almost identical to what the previous site evaluation was, what John and I did. And so I think that was an error on their part. They're just trying to fix it. I mean, you do have strong evidence of the Title V report done last February. Someone examined the tanks inside, and there's no comment at all of any groundwater coming in at all at the time. But then again, this may not be the highest groundwater season that we had.
Mhm.
I go by the numbers.
So could I just
there's a
ask,
physical world and there's a paper world, and you got to blend them together.
yeah.
Go ahead, Fran.
Sure.
So, Mr.,
But
I
I'm
don't
just gonna
see
sit-
One
anywhere
sec, please.
in Wade's,
Go ahead, Fran.
I don't see anywhere that, I don't, maybe I'm missing something, but where, the only thing I see is a variance to allow reduction of the requirement of 12-inch separation between the inlet and outlet tees to high groundwater. Then Mr. Glosser said, well, maybe you want it to be 6 inch. I'll go with 6 inches. Or he mentioned just 1 inch above the groundwater. But then he said, well, you could say 6 inches if you wanted to grant the variance that way. I mean, does it make a difference what we say tonight, Wade, in how he proceeds forward?
Yes. 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 There. What John's asking you is for some variance or varying, so he can work with the situation when he goes out there. Title V requires 12 inches of the groundwater to be 12 inches to the pipes exiting the septic tank. And his design shows it. The local Board of Health can allow the groundwater to be higher or closer to the pipes up to 1 inch. So that's where John was talking about the groundwater can be 6 inches to the pipe, but it can't be no less than 1 inch to the pipe, because that's the limitation the local Board of Health has. So you could, if you wanted to tonight, allow John maintain those tanks as long as the groundwater does not come closer than 1 inch to the pipes exiting the tanks. So that would allow him to go out there to investigate if he wants to, take a look at it, see where the groundwater is, and then. But then again, I don't know. It's difficult because the ground's been disturbed. But that's what John's talking about. He's looking for some variation.
Why would we say
a
not
field
know-
determination, so we can go out there and make sure the system's in compliance.
So not knowing if we really have the maximum high groundwater right now because of the time of the year, why would we want to go as close to 1 inch? Why would we want it? Why not say 6 inches? Does that make a difference? The way that we say it in the variance is what I'm saying. If we specify in the variance.
I guess my question is, what are the
Whatever you specify in the variance, that's what you're granting. I'm getting skips on the audio, so I'm not hearing everybody's questions.
Yeah, you're freezing up too, Wade. I'm not sure what's going on there with your connection. But basically the question has been asked,
Oh,
if we think that we are
yeah.
a little below,
Yeah.
if we are a little below maximum high groundwater right now, maybe saying 1 inch is not wise, because maybe in fact we're already off the high groundwater level. The question then becomes, all right, paraphrasing Fran now, what if we said, all right, it can be up to 6 inches, so go out and do the test as fast as you can, and if it's 6 inches or lower below the the entrance or exit port that we're looking at, then it's okay. To paraphrase, I think what Fran was getting at. the question then is, all right, do we have essentially a 6-inch correction on what would be high groundwater? Is that just a safe thing to assume?
Well, I would say you're, no, I'm more of a numbers guy. I'm more of the models. It's, you know, what we saw in the observation holes is the maximum groundwater. And you could go out there this week and dig next to the tanks and look at groundwater and stuff, but it won't give you a definite elevation. It won't give you the highest elevation that those tanks will ever have around the tanks, because the groundwater will fluctuate, and you're on the downside of high groundwater season. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure that's the wisest thing, but that's John's proposal though. So I'll let John argue that point. I don't want to be the one arguing or discussing or trying to convince the board to go with this. This is a part of the variance request. I guess they're bringing this before you. I wrote my thoughts on the letter, on the peer review that I gave you, but I think it's John does have a right to explain what he wants to do with the designs, and he's coming up with some logic to keep the tanks in the ground, and I think he's asking the board if they would go along with them. And I think you're right, and I think your thought process is correct, Fran and Tom, regarding the groundwater. It's not going to be at its maximum right now. So if you look at it 6 inches below the pipe, entering X in the tank, it may be higher at another year. You're correct on that. So I think you guys got it. So I think you guys pretty much understand what's going on and what's being asked.
So,
Does that make sense?
when you say you're a numbers guy, what you're doing is saying, well, we do have a groundwater elevation where the most recent test holes were dug. And that groundwater elevation essentially would put these tanks underwater. Is that what you're saying? If that water table is essentially flat from the street to the tanks, there's the problem?
Yeah, that's correct. Going through the science for site evaluation models as a maximum groundwater, at times, it may not be this year, may not be next year, but at times groundwater would be up high enough that the tanks would be, the pipes going into the tanks would be under groundwater. And that's the time water would enter into that tank, and that pump would just keep on running. It could be running for months. And that would put a big stress on that field.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that it's an expensive operation. They're all expensive operations, but replacing them every 10 years is pretty expensive also. And we don't really know the history of this, but we do know that there was quite an error on this design, on the original design, by allowing the tanks to be a foot below, and at times in groundwater, because our models that we found the last time John and I was there, and the models that Landmark saw 12 years ago, are almost inches from each other. They're very compatible. So we found the same high groundwater markings at 2 different times. So I would say maximum groundwater is at the elevation that John's plan states. And in looking at Landmark's as-built, it places the inlet of the septic tank to be below that high model elevation that we marked, that I observed for this plan. So yeah, the tank, at times the tanks can be underwater.
Mm-hmm.
So can I ask another question about the environmental impact and also the public health impact? You know, if the groundwater is seeping in, then contaminated water is getting out. Is that correct?
No.
Well, groundwater is sweeping in, and the contaminated water, or the sewage from the house would be diluted with the groundwater coming in. And I think the force of the groundwater is greater than the pressure inside the tanks. So groundwater be coming into the tanks, but the tanks are connected through pipes through a gravity system, so the pump would kick on. So the pump itself would continually run and move the groundwater, mix it in with the sewage to the field itself. So everything would stay underground until the leaching facility becomes inundated or becomes overwhelmed with the amount of water being pumped into it. This field is designed for 330 gallons per day. If you have groundwater pumping in it continuously, you're going to be going into thousands of gallons per day. And so it does a wear and tear on the leaching facility.
And then this is,
That's, I'm sorry.
and what about the Charles River being there? And I mean, so what's the
What about the what?
environment?
I'm sorry.
The Charles River is very close to this
Yeah,
project.
that's an influence too. That's probably, yeah, it's in a flood area too. The area is in a flood area. So Charles River, that groundwater fluctuates also, although the surface water fluctuates. It's a very wet area of town. So that's why I think the models show pretty much of a true image of where the groundwater could be at times.
Just one thing that you need to realize is that the pipes going in and out of the pump, out of the septic tank and the pump chamber are rendered watertight when the system is constructed. So they're either put into plastic boots, or they're rendered watertight through the use of water seal cement. So just because the water comes up to the pipes does not mean that the water automatically can get into the pump chamber or the septic tank, and vice versa. Just because there's sewage in those tanks does not mean that the sewage can leak out through the pipes. They're watertight. They're supposed to be watertight. All of the contractors now know they're supposed to be watertight, and they're rendered watertight. The 1-inch, the 12-inch above the water table, and then the allowance to be 1 inch is simply a factor of safety, so that, should the pipes not be rendered watertight, that there's still a factor of safety where you're above the water table. So I think just by sort of coming to the conclusion that sewage can go in and groundwater can, sewage can go out and groundwater can go in of these tanks isn't sort of a given in my world anyway. We don't want the water to be near those pipes, but it doesn't automatically mean that they're leaking in or out. So that's all. I mean, I just think that, I know we saw models, and we actually saw weeping in our test holes, but there's nothing done either by Landmark or by myself that's near those tanks. So even if you did something, at the back of the house and then kind of drew a straight and found the water table to be in a certain elevation and then drew a straight line and said, well, the water table should be at this elevation at the tanks. I was just trying to set this up so that if Wade and I found out that the water table at the tanks reasonably was 6 inches or 9 inches or 3 inches, below the piping, that I wouldn't have to go back to the board. But if it seems to be an issue, then we can just sort of table that part of this request and, either try to do it again someday when we have more information, or they'll have to put in the new tanks. You understand that my plan that you see here is showing a new septic tank and a new pump chamber. If you read the little note to the, it's sort of to the left of the profile, it says that the contractor shall hire a licensed plumber to raise the what we call the building sewer, the pipe coming out through the foundation wall to the elevation and location shown on the plan. So we're raising that pipe up by a foot or so to create the separation. And that's my only point, is if it would be a shame to do that, and then someday we find out we didn't have to do that, because $10,000, and you know, nobody wants to spend $10,000 needlessly. So that was my only point here, or the only reason I put that in. But if it's going to create doubt and a problem for the board, we can handle it, you know, in the future. If we do find out that indeed Wade and I do agree that the water table is lower at the tanks than it is at essentially at the street where the test holes were done. And I just took a peek at Landmark's test holes, and it's very close to one of them. The one on the tank side, on the driveway side, is very close to the street. In fact, it's very close to where we dug our test pit. And the other one is back farther, but it's not very close to the tank or the pump chamber. So.
One more question about your test holes. Your suggestion of going down to where the tanks are and checking out to see where groundwater is. If that happens on whatever day it does, could you at that same time go back and take a look at the test holes that are up near the street where you know where the groundwater was a few weeks ago and see where the groundwater is that day? Presumably, if there's been a lowering of groundwater, it should be essentially across the area. So might you be able to do a correction even then as to how far lower the groundwater is in this area compared to what was during a season of high groundwater?
Yeah, we saw weeping. I think we saw weeping in both of those holes. We should be able to see if that weeping is at the same elevation or if it's dropped.
What do you think about that, Wade?
Yeah, I just want to restate what you're saying. Tom, you're saying go back like Thursday, because that'd be the best day to do it. Go back Thursday, dig a hole by the septic tanks and see what you see there. And at the same time, dig a new hole, a fresh hole up by the road, and then compare the two elevations to see how different they are. Like the one at the house could be 6 inches lower than the one we're seeing by the road. And then it'd be like some kind of a factual event showing that the groundwater by the road is actually higher than the groundwater by the foundation, because we're finding it that day. We're finding it, you know, physically looking at it. So there is a difference in the elevations.
Yeah, well, I was
Is that what
asking
you're
for something a
saying,
little
Tom?
different. What I was talking about is, aren't the test holes that were originally dug at the site of the new Presby system, aren't those test holes still there?
Yeah, but they're backfilled. They're not open though. They're backfilled. So
So you couldn't, for example, check to see where the water level is today in those?
No. The thing about deep observation holes, once you dig a hole, you're digging in virgin material. So you see the profile probably for the first time ever since the glaciers were there. So you can read a lot of things, what's going on, groundwater coming out, coloring the models,
Yeah.
the top and subsoil. The history of the land comes out. But once you're done with that hole, you backfill it.
All right.
You can't redig it because
All right.
everything's disturbed.
Yeah. So you need a new hole near where the other
So
ones
that's
were.
why we record. Yeah. But we recorded it though, Tom. At the bottom of the plan, that's a recorded profile of what we saw. So that's just as good as having a hole open. We got the colors, we got the soil description, we got the depths of the top and subsoil. We have the models, we have the elevation of the water weeping out. So, you know, we have the depth of the hole, we dug it in. So that's why we record it. So we don't have to keep the holes open.
Right.
So
Okay.
it's kind of like,
So
it's
you're
documenting
correct, Wade.
what we see.
Let's move on. You're correct. What we need is two holes. A new one near the street, about the same place as the ones you originally observed, and one down next to the where the tanks are. And what we need to do then is take a look and see, well, where does water seem to be seeping in both those locations, and also and compare the one at the street with the one you've already dug up there to see where was the water seeping in a few weeks ago, so you can see how much difference there now is between those two levels, and maybe that can become correction factor that you then take back and say, all right, we are in fact a foot lower today. Well, okay, now I'll go back down to the one by the tanks and say, is the water level here more than a foot below, the pipes?
Yeah, if you do it the same day, the same time, at least you have some kind of comparison.
Yep.
And you could probably do it any time. Well, at least you want water coming out. So you could probably, it's not a bad idea doing it now. You probably get more information you would by doing 2 holes than just doing 1. And if there is a question with the tanks being too close to groundwater, they could rubber boot the pipes going into the tanks, and they could seal the tops of the tanks with rubber gaskets to make it almost like a waterproof top to it, and a waterproof piping going into both of the tanks, which is required when groundwater is really, it's like 1 inch to 1 inch to the tank. You'd want to seal the pipes going into the tanks. That's what I would recommend if we were going to keep the tanks in the ground, that the tanks would have to be then waterproofed, just in case there's some kind of human error involved. It would help the homeowners longevity on their pump system in their leaching facility,
All right, well,
if that makes sense.
oh,
Well, that's added to your original conclusions. I mean, that's something new, right? From your original discussion.
well, the variances that we're talking about here, yeah, this is on top of all that. So I kind of get the argument that folks don't want to spend $10,000 if they don't have to. And my feeling is if we had a little more information to go on, we might be a bit more comfortable by allowing those 2 existing tanks to stay in the ground. And the testing that we're thinking of doing now might allow us to have a little more confidence, especially if on top of everything else we've talked about, we seal essentially those tanks better than they even are today. So that even if, for whatever reason, water could creep up around those ports in and out, it wouldn't go in. So that they function the way they're supposed to. So what do you think of that idea, everybody?
So are we saying we're not going to grant the second variance until we get more information? I mean, can we say contingent upon more information? Or do we have to grant both variances tonight? But the second one contingent upon more information.
Yeah, well, John's proposal to go out there and do this digging, I think that was kind of, I think, requesting that we would grant the variance contingent upon the results of that test. I think that's what you had in mind, right, John?
Yeah, it's on the plan, part of the plan way over to the left by the north arrow.
Yeah.
And, basically I can read it. It just says, the septic tank and pump chambers be certified by approved Title V inspector. And then, so I started off by saying that, it's possible for the septic tank and pump chamber to remain if it can be shown that, first of all, they have to be inspected by a certified Title V inspector. And then secondly, if it can be shown by soil evaluation that the inlet and outlet piping is at least that's supposed to say 1 inch above the seasonal high groundwater table. So I was by no means asking you to blindly approve this. It requires more testing. But so the only reason I asked it up front was just so that, I'm lazy. I don't want to come back. Not that I don't want to see you, but I just thought, you could say, yeah, okay, 1 inch, and now you and Wade, John, go figure it out. And, I'm going to defer to Wade. If Wade's nervous about it, we get out there and we, kind of come to the conclusion that, yeah, maybe, because you can't give the variance to be less than 1 inch. That's, you know, a given. It's not in DEP. It's not in Title V for you to do that. So Wade and I have to be convinced that it doesn't come up more than or less than 1 inch separation to the bottom of those pipes. If it does, then that's the end of the story. They got to replace the tanks. But if, and you know, even 1 inch is getting a little bit
I know, it sounds,
close. That's why I threw out the 6 inches. If that makes everyone comfortable, it might even make me more comfortable. But I just was trying to avoid kind of dragging the thing out to a couple of meetings. Maybe I should have just gone back right away and done the testing, but didn't happen. So here we are.
Well, we can be conservative here and simply say, as a result of these tests, we established that there's at least 6 inches of separation between the bottom of the pipe and groundwater, with the correction being applied that says, well, yeah, but it's 6 inches at maximum high groundwater. And if you go up the hill a bit to, you know, the street and discover that we're already 6 inches away from what was high groundwater this season, then what we really are saying is, well, therefore, the water level down by the tank better be a foot lower than, you know.
Yeah, I think you have to do, like you were saying, it makes sense, do a test above where the tanks are and then one somewhere below in virgin soil. I mean, Wade and I know that you have to dig the holes in virgin soil. Digging out in an existing test pit is very difficult to get accurate results. So if we do that, and then, you know, we're comfortable that it's below the existing piping in and out of the tank, which, as Wade said, is probably a good foot below where I'm showing my piping, then, you know, we would, you know, what I would like to sort of set it up is then Wade and we can just move forward with, you know, okay, now the plan's approved because we have the separation and just, you know, issue the permit.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not trying to force this on you by any means. I can certainly understand that, you know, you might not want to do that, or you could, as was discussed, you know, put a condition on it that it has to be tested, and you have the right to make that 1 inch or anything up to 12 inches. That's your vote. I don't get to vote on that. So it's just that 1 inch is what the minimum that Title V says. So that's why I put it in there that way. So anything in between that is acceptable, and certainly it's acceptable. In fact, I already put it on the plan that it, you know, we have to prove it by soil evaluation. And I certainly understand what you're saying. We saw water table, let's just say in test pit 1, weeping at, well, let's look at test pit 2. We saw weeping at 48 inches. So if we go out there and we see now in the same location, general location, weeping at 58 inches, we'll know the water table essentially has dropped 10 inches over the last month and a half since this was done. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I'm not going to do, I agree with Wade. I mean, there's, you know, we don't really want to copy the mistake. If there was a mistake made before, we don't want to redo it again. But on the other hand, just to spend $10,000 to me, you know, without really kind of delving into it as much as possible, seems to me to kind of be a mistake also, right? I don't want to repeat a mistake, but I don't want to make a mistake, a $10,000 mistake, because I believe that the reason this system failed is that the leach bed's way too small. It's a fraction of, it's half of what we're showing now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a little, you know, the Cultex or a infiltrator system that, you know, just didn't have
All
a
right,
lot
Wade,
of area.
a question for you, Wade. Are you comfortable with the board? The board hasn't done this yet, but are you comfortable with the board doing this qualified conditional approval where it really becomes up to you and John in the field to take a look at these new holes, one up where the other ones already were dug and another one down near the tanks, and essentially decide between the water levels in those different holes or where the water's seeping in, do you have the safety of at least an inch, if not more than that, or not? And if you don't, new tanks. It'd be your call in the field, basically.
It's a lot of times it's nice saying, well, the board said this, and I get to walk away. It's not my responsibility. The board voted this in. But the tests that John's talking about, this is how I would see it work out. This is what I'd be looking for. There'd be a test by the foundation of the house, somewhere with this virgin material, either side of that sidewalk that you see at the bottom of the existing driveway going into the house. There'd have to be a test hole there, and then a test hole up by the front by River Road, in the area where we dug our test holes, and where groundwater, there'll be groundwater because we're so close to Charles River. But look at the elevations of groundwater. If the groundwater elevation is pretty much the same at both test holes, in my opinion, is that groundwater elevation is the same throughout the front property. I'll go back to the models that we recorded back when we did the first site evaluation. Therefore, like the tanks would be underwater. But if groundwater is different, if by the road, the River Road, the groundwater is a lot higher than the groundwater is down by the house, there is actually some kind of hydraulic drop in the ground, then I would say, gee, groundwater is lower by the tanks, so maybe the tanks could exist as they are. And John mentioned we do have 34 inches already recorded by the road, and we can take what the elevation is and we can make an adjustment to it and see if the tanks would actually be in ground or out of groundwater. Could do that. That test wouldn't take too long. It's just 2 observation holes, and we can make the determination pretty quick. I'm assuming that the groundwater is going to be the same throughout the front yard, just by the type of soils they are and just the experience of not much land there. But I don't know everything. So, and I have to compliment John of trying to do good for his applicant. I mean, his client, I should say. He's fighting for his client. He's fighting for to make a cheaper system and an unnecessary upgrade. And not everybody will do that. A lot of people just say, just go for the upgrade and so what? But he's actually being pretty real about it, and he wants to save components he feels they could actually stay there. And he's asking the board if he can investigate some more. After we went out there, did the site evaluation, he thought about it and talked to the installer, the excavated a hole, and he has his experience, and they're working things out together. And we think they might have something going on there. Myself, I'm more conservative. I'd rather stay with original site evaluation and just have the tanks upgraded. But if the board wants this small testing to go on just to verify if John is correct with the water table adjust, then you're accommodating the applicant. So I can go either way. But
Right.
let's go with the test. See what happens. Let's go with the 2 test holes.
Let's hear from the board now. I just proposed that myself, but now how about the other members of the board? Are you comfortable with essentially granting both of these variances and letting the people in the field basically decide whether or not the second variance is actually going to fly or not?
I thought Wade said he felt uncomfortable doing that.
Too much pressure, Wade?
Well, it's half and half. You're never gonna be the hero of the day. You're never gonna make friends in this line of work. My interest of going out there again, because you might be able to help out the homeowner. And it'd be a real shame if John was actually correct and old tanks were destroyed, new tanks were put in. Again, been doing this for a long time, and there's always surprises every day, every week. There's always something that I thought that wouldn't occur, but actually did occur. So I'm willing to go out there and take a look. Since he's willing to pop the holes in the ground, I'm willing to go out there and take a look at it. He's being very upfront, saying if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. So I mean, that pressure's theirs off. We have an approved plan. Well, we have a plan here that's drawn that's in compliance other than sieve analysis. So it's not like something has to be redeveloped or reestablished. So going out there, verify if groundwater does drop by the house. If it doesn't, then I would recommend that this plan that you had before you go ahead. If it does drop, then we have to evaluate it and see if it is at least a foot. I mean, I'm sorry, at least an inch below the invert and outlet pipes out of the tanks.
Yeah, that's a good point. What you're doing is what's already in the law. What we're trying to do is confirm that we're actually interpreting it correctly. The sieve analysis part is something we can do, that's a little bit easier, yes or no kind of decision to make. So Eileen, did that give you an answer or?
Kind of.
Okay. Oh, Fran, what's your feeling on this? You gotta unmute
Muted.
yourself.
You have to unmute yourself.
Okay, I'm sorry. I was concerned about the 1 inch on the plan, and we should at least change that to 6 inches. But if Wade's okay with it, I'm fine with it. And then adding to what the variance that if they did use the existing tanks, they would waterproof them, I guess is what you were suggesting, Wade. How did you feel about that, Mr. Bloss?
Yeah, I thought that's an excellent idea. And if whatever I make out in the field, if everybody gets upset, they can always go back to the Board of Health because I only represent you guys. I'm not the Board of Health. So whatever I say out there, they can always say, we don't like what you said, and they can come back to the Board of Health and re-argue it again if they wanted to, and what we saw out there. So they can go on, but yeah, but I think waterproofing the tanks as much as possible would be a wise thing to do if the existing tanks stay in the ground. The proposed tanks won't have to be watertight because they're already above the inlet and outlet's already above a foot above groundwater.
Mhm.
But it would have to be done. It would have to be done this Thursday though, because groundwater's dropping.
Right.
And I think, John, would that be enough? Would that be enough time, John, to go
Yeah.
out there Thursday?
Yeah, I already alerted Kenny Jones that this
Okay.
was something that, we're contemplating, and he can bring his machine. I think we just need the mini excavator because I don't think we're going to be digging down more than 3 or 4 feet before we hit water. So,
All right. So it can be done. The question is, will the board basically endorse it being done? I think I heard Fran indicating support with the addition of waterproofing the tank to the extent that it can be done. Basically, the top regions and the regions around where the pipes come in and out, I guess. Eileen?
I think she also mentioned changing from the 1 inch to the 6 inch.
6 inches.
Yeah.
It's about the seasonal high.
Which will build us in a significant safety measure if we do in fact have this ability to correct for groundwater elevations.
Okay.
So
So
with that
let me
in
get.
Wayne, anything more to say before we go ahead with a proposal?
No, I mean, I apologize for interrupting. I just wanted to clarify, the boards that can allow the groundwater to be 6 inches to the pipes entering and exiting the tanks, not 1 inch. Is that correct?
Well, that was Fran's proposal. I think I heard Eileen.
That's safer.
Yeah. And Eileen, I think you were endorsing it.
I was seconding her alleged motion at that point.
Right.
This is a little bit out of my purview, so I was just sitting back listening to everything.
So I guess the marching orders for y'all in the field is, can you confirm with the best, measurements you can make out there and observations, the maximum high groundwater will still have 6 inches between the bottom of the pipe and maximum high groundwater. If you can't assure yourselves of that, then this is a non-starter and you got to put some new tanks in the ground. I think that's what I heard the members of the board saying just now.
Are you asking me, Mr. Chairman? I mean, that's certainly acceptable to me.
Yeah, no, actually, I wasn't asking you, John.
Okay.
I'm glad it is. But if both Fran and Eileen are comfortable with that.
Yes.
It's more conservative from our perspective.
All right. So is there a motion to grant a variance for the use of a sieve rather than groundwater direct measurements, and for there to be an allowed up to 6-inch separation between maximum high groundwater at the bottom of the pipes going into these tanks, as to be confirmed in the field?
So I make a motion to allow the use of the sieve analysis in lieu of the percolation tests, and also to allow a reduction of the requirement of 12 inches separation to 6 inches separation between the inlet and outlet tees to high groundwater, and that we also are requiring waterproofing of the tank if the tanks stay in as constructed right now. Is that correct?
That's your motion. That makes it correct.
Okay.
Is there a second?
There is a second to that very long motion, yes.
All right, I think it captures everything we've talked about. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank
Thank
you, members of the board. Thanks, Wade. Thank you, Betsy.
John.
all right. Good luck on
Good night,
Thursday,
John.
guys.
Good evening.
Thank you.
Thursday.
All right. Well, that took a little longer than I thought it might. I think we did some pretty good work here, guys. So let's move on. The public hearing is now closed, and next on the agenda, I would like to recognize a visitor. Chief Chuck Stone is here. On the things to talk about tonight, the issue of enforcement of the COVID-19 orders. And so, welcome, Chuck.
Hey, how you doing?
Oh, doing great. So there's been a correspondence between the Board of Health and the Norfolk PD over the need to basically work together. We hope not very often, but the idea of, if the time ever comes where somebody who is in a public space and not maintaining social distancing and not willing to wear a mask is encountered, and cajoling and every other kind of form of convincing the person in the error of his or her ways doesn't work, can we call upon the Norfolk Police Department to help us out?
You can.
It's good to hear.
Unless Betsy wants to go out.
I think that was a no.
I've heard that several times this week.
Being a little bit more specific, and thank you for offering to do this, and we have a letter, I think. Did you see the letter from Tom asking you to do this? Is that right?
Chuck, did you see the short letter that was sent over? Was it today, Betsy?
Yes.
There's about a one pager, a one paragrapher, actually.
It was
Let me
actually taken right from the information. I think that was sent from Chuck.
Yes.
Oh, so we're sending back what Chuck sent us?
Yes.
It was,
Oh.
yeah, it was included in that, the material that he sent over.
Okay. Well, in that case, I'm assuming you're pretty comfortable with it since you guys wrote it.
Well, it was sent from, I don't know.
Um,
Um,
I mean, basically, this is sort of an exercise in escalating pressure to try to convince somebody to come around to behaving rationally and reasonably. Where we'll try the soft touch first and just take it as long as we can, but if eventually it does seem as if the presence of a policeman might be something which lets this happen. So we are protecting not only the health of the person who doesn't want to wear the mask, but everybody else around that person. It seems like a logical way to try to, enforce the order that's been written by the state and reinforced by the town.
Yeah, I'm reading the order. Does it specifically say that we're going to enforce what the governor wrote?
Well,
Like,
in effect, that's what's going on here. I mean, to some extent, what we've done with our Norfolk order is we've mimicked a bit of what was in the state order that went into effect a couple days before then.
right.
Because the state essentially is assuming that they can't really enforce this. They just don't have the manpower to basically be in all the different cities and towns in the Commonwealth and enforce this. They're looking to the boards of health and the local police departments to be the eyes and ears, if you will. So yeah, that's where it's coming from.
Okay, so the only thing I was asking, and I asked this earlier of Betsy, is there going to be any fines that you want written, or do you want us to do the best we can to cajole them into wearing a mask?
Well, cajoling obviously is the starting point. The question is, if they simply refuse, what do you do? I believe the state regulation has a $300 fine for any violation.
It says up to 300. There are other towns that are doing anywhere from 50 to 300. Actually, I saw one that was 1,000. I certainly don't think we need to go there, but that's all. My people would ask me, do you want us to write a citation for a money fine?
Yeah.
We can also go, progressively, verbal warning first time, and I'm sure that's what we're going to do anyways. But in second time, because we have that incident management system, so we'll know somebody's spoken to this person before when we run them through our system.
Yep.
Second one would be maybe a written warning, and maybe the third one would be whatever fine you suggest.
Mm.
Says up to 300. So this is not the highest level of breaking the law, but it's also a health issue. So maybe that's
Right.
even more than speeding.
I think personally, if you ask someone and then you write them a citation, 3 strikes and you're out. Pay up to the $300. Pay the $300. Who's going to do that? I mean, we all need to be in this together. So that's my opinion about what the fine should be. And that's, yeah. But my question is, if I get a call personally from a neighbor saying to me that I've been in such and such retail store and the help is not, the employees are not wearing masks or wearing, do I call you, or should I say to you being Chuck Stone, Chief Stone, or should I ask them to call you? How should the process work?
You muted, Chuck.
doing that because I have a dog that barks.
Well, I've got a cat sitting on my neck.
You have one of
Tail.
those. Okay. So anyway, whoever sees the violation is certainly authorized to call the police department, either 911 or other, and just the regular police number, 3206. It's been there for all of the years that I've been on the job. So that's what I would suggest that they do. Just call, and we will send someone out. And we'll probably use that same progressive exercise that I already laid out. So it's just like Fran says, and they're argumentative, and they're not, they're refusing to do it, and it's just their third strike and you're out. Then maybe it all depends on the person what the fine's going to be at that, but it'll be up to the 300 that you authorize.
So should we give the police discretion to fine as they see fit?
Oh yeah.
Depending on how obstreperous the person is?
Yes.
I would suggest to you that that's what we do anyways, whether it's
Okay.
a violation or other. There's a lot of Norfolk residents that get quite a bit of swing from Norfolk police because, we're trying to keep them on the good side, but also that get the point across that, yeah, you got to obey the law. So, and that's why we have that same progressive program in place for motor vehicle violations. Unless, of course, they're screaming and yelling at us, and then they may step up quicker. But
Yeah.
All right.
Well, I'll leave it.
So basically, we should be encouraging, well, especially proprietors. If a customer comes into a store and refuses to, respond, they should feel comfortable with either the 911 or the 3206. Is that the number? The
Yeah.
non-emergency.
Yeah, February 3206.
Yeah, the non-emergency number, and just request assistance. And
911 for an emergency, but they could certainly call the 3206 number, in which it's still come to us.
Yeah.
You go to the menu, it goes right to dispatch.
Yeah.
You hit number 2 and it goes to dispatch. So.
Right.
We're comfortable with whatever you guys say. So if you want us to do that progressive plan, that's what we'll probably do anyways. And if there's you want to find and institute it on the 3rd or 4th strike, then we'll do it as you say. It's your area of.
Well, I'm not sure the Board of Health is all that maybe experienced in this line of work the way your people are. So when it comes to convincing people who aren't necessarily inclined to do what they're supposed to do, to go ahead and do it anyway, your people are way ahead of us. So whatever scheme you guys have worked out over the years, I'd say just go use it.
Yeah, that's probably what we're going to do. I just needed you to swear us in as agents or vote us in as agents of the Board of Health.
Right.
And tell me what fine you want imposed
Well,
or a limit of.
yeah, I think up to 300 seems to be a kind of a Commonwealth-wide number. So it's not going to come as a shock to anybody who's paid any kind of attention.
No.
This is out there.
So one thing you can do, you can go on and you can Google it. And there's a section talks about the COVID mask wearing requirement. It was a NBC 10 did a study at every town or almost every town in the Commonwealth and what they've instituted for their policy and fines and things like that. And that's where I got the one that said it was up to 1,000. I think it was Somerville or something like that, but it was that was too much money for me to.
Yeah, they're tough in Somerville.
Mm.
I'm not going to guarantee it was Somerville, but it was something like that. But it just every single one was basically going along with Governor Baker's order. So
Yeah.
that's all we really have to have here, and then we can do what it is. We have had a couple incidents. I think I suggested it to you last week when we last spoke, where people did in fact not wear the mask, and there was a pushing and shoving in front of the food mart one day. So those things happen. people aren't maintaining this 6-foot distance with the mask off. You know, I mean, you can put it down. You can make it more restrictive if you want. I saw some in there that says joggers and bicyclists must wear masks. But you know, the governor's order covers a lot of things. If you can't breathe because you have asthma or something, or something else.
Well, all I can say is I'm a little out of shape and I'm kind of old. So when I'm bicycling from the center of town up the hill, getting to my house, and I've done it with a mask on. And halfway up the hill, that mask was soaking wet and wasn't doing an awful lot to protect me from anything.
Yeah,
and making life miserable. So I kind of sympathize with the jogger or the bicyclist who's having a hard time with a mask.
So do I. That's why I brought it up, because I've experienced the same issues. But
yeah,
I mean, if you're out for a walk, I can't imagine you'd want to wear it unless you're going to come in contact with it. Okay. You know, so that's when you'd have to, you know, you'd have to put the mask on. And don't wear it in the car. When I get out of the car, I put it on and go into the post office or things like that. So, and everybody's been good. I haven't seen anybody.
So is this letter appropriate then?
well, we're going to have to basically take a vote to create a designation for the Norfolk Police Department to serve as agents of the Norfolk Board of Health.
We don't have to say any more than that. It says in the letter, this appointment will be as agents, you will be able to engage in all public outreach, enforcement, and mitigation activities that our existing staff can perform.
Yeah.
Meaning,
Well, that's
so
all
that's
written
what we're
down here.
talking about. We're leaving it
Yeah.
up to the police officers to use their wisdom to handle the situation. Sounds good to me.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So if the police department is comfortable with it, then I would entertain a motion to make the department agents of the Norfolk Board of Health for the purposes described in this letter.
So I make a motion that we ask the Norfolk Police to be agents of the Board of Health as described in this letter to Chief Stone as of tonight. And tonight is May 19th,
Is there a
2000.
second?
I second that motion.
Further discussion?
No.
If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you, Chuck.
Thank you.
Okay,
I
thank
want
you.
my own citation book, but I don't think that was such a good idea.
I think you should have been part of that, Eileen. You, Betsy, Fran, Tom, you could all be writing citations. All right, if you're good with me, then I'll drop off.
I am. We are.
Thank you.
Good night, Chuck. Thanks
All right,
again.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, on the agenda, we have some minutes to review and approve. These are the ones from April 28th and from May 7th. Do we have any responses from the board members about anything they saw there that was not right?
Fran had picked up on 2 typos on the April 28th meeting, which are fixed.
And those corrections have been made?
They have.
Okay. And Fran, are you comfortable then with the minutes as
I
they've
am.
been amended?
Yep.
Would you be willing to make a motion to approve?
Sure. So I make a motion that we approve the meeting minutes of the Board of Health for April 28, 2020 and May 7th, 2020.
I second that motion.
Further discussion? Don't see any. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. On our agenda, we have Board of Health correspondence review.
Yes, I don't have anything specific for you.
Okay. Under new and old business, we have on-site sewage disposal regs down here again. I thought we decided, or am I missing something?
Public hearing scheduled for June 17th. The legal ad has gone into the newspaper. I've distributed the draft regulations to many people today, asking for comment. It's been posted on our website, so
Mhm.
that was it. That was just the update.
Okay. Thank you. MRC updates from Fran.
I don't have anything specific. And we're not having any meetings, so
Mhm.
I don't have anything special to say. Betsy, anything new?
No, we've got our Norfolk MRC Facebook page, which Elizabeth and I have been keeping updated with our daily MEMA updates and our twice a week town administrator updates, and any other pertinent information has been aired there, and also on the Norfolk community Facebook page.
There's one item that came across recently, a notice from the Mosquito Control Project that on or about May 26th, they're going to be engaging in additional spraying activity, ultra low volume use of a pesticide. This is an adulticide now. It's more of an advisory than it is is it okay with you guys kind of a letter. So it's more, I guess, for our information.
Yeah, that's been distributed too. That was we posted that on our website today
Okay.
and Facebook pages. So hopefully people are aware that's going to be taking place. That's the weekly, overnight spraying from the trucks.
Yep.
How does someone who doesn't want that on their property, how does that get handled?
There's actually an instructions on that letter.
I see it at the very bottom, process to exclude property. Okay. So just so the public knows that, but this is on our website. This is
Yeah, it was posted today, actually.
I think I either went online or called when we had bees.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't remember now. They used to have to file a letter with the town clerk, but I don't remember what the process is now. I'd have to read up on it.
But it is right here on the letter. So as long as the letter is posted, folks can exclude themselves, I'm guessing, by following the directions here. I hope.
Well, we should just let everybody who happens to be tuning in know that they can in fact opt out.
Right.
And the directions are at the bottom of the page. Meeting schedule. If we're sticking with third Tuesdays, mean June 17th.
Yep, that's actually, I think that's a Wednesday. That was a special meeting date we had to change because planning board is meeting on the 16th, would have been our regular meeting.
Yep.
Okay.
And 17th, yeah.
All right, and then on into July and August. I think I may have a conflict with the 18th, but I'll explore it between now and June 17th.
Okay. Maybe always reschedule.
Okay. Is there any other business?
So I just want to mention that I've been listening in on Wednesday calls from the director, Ron O'Connor. the Office of Local and Regional Health. This is up at from the executive offices of Health and Human Services. So these are Wednesday meetings for all local boards of health to bring people up to date about what's going on with COVID and the reopenings and the phases and the responsibilities of the boards of health throughout this process, just like we've had to enlist the help of the police department to enforce the mask regulation. Well, going forward with these phase 1, 2, 3, 4 reopenings, there are a lot of restrictions and compliance issues, and everything falls on the back of the Board of Health in the community. Those are the folks that are really supposed to be paying attention to this, and who these directives are directed to, so that you'll know how to give guidance to the members in your community. So we're talking about schools, camps, religious organizations, retail, you name it. What else? What else do we have in town? Our town hall, any offices, health offices. And there's a lot that the Board of Health really needs to be having their eye on. I don't know if you folks have had an opportunity to listen in on any of these calls, but I don't think we have the capacity in our town with just one administrative individual to keep ahead of all of this and know what the regulations are the right word, the executive orders from the governor. So I just wanted to go on record, because I know that the selectmen, the advisory board, these folks are talking about cutting budgets, and to consider cutting the budget for the Board of Health, if they're even considering across the board, is ludicrous. And if anything, we should be looking for opportunities to bring in a part-time public health director. And if there's any way that you folks feel the same way that I do, we should be lobbying for this at town meeting, and with at least these two boards, the advisory board and the select board. So I've reached out to a few people, this individual, as well as the Mass Association of Health Boards, to see if there's any emergency funding available for communities like ours, that we could hire a part-time director during this period where we're rolling out all of these different processes for people to conform to, if that's the right word, but we all have to do it, and give guidance. So someone that understands public health and can give guidance to summer camps, the schools opening, graduations, just my thoughts that I wanted to share with you, and let you know that I have reached out to these couple of folks anyway. And if you have some other individuals or organizations that you think might be able to help this, help us through this, I'm just putting the bug in your head as well. So
how do we approach the advisory board or the select board to discuss not having funding reduced? How does that happen? Or does that just happen at town meeting when they stand up and say, we're going to reduce the budget, and we have to stand up and say, please don't?
I think we could do it certainly at town meeting, because that's what happens at town meeting. But who knows if we're even going to have town meeting. There is guidance given from the state that we might be able to have online meetings. for town meetings, I think it's in the legislature right now to come up with a proposal for that at the state level. But we should start the process happening now by, we can't approach the select board tonight because they're meeting the same time we are, but maybe they'll listen to our meeting or minutes or listening to what went on at our meeting. And the advisory board, I'm not sure how often they meet, but certainly we could zoom in on any of their meetings and make sure that we tell them about our concerns. And I really think it would be so beneficial for you folks to listen in on one of these Wednesday calls, and it would just give you a sense of what's down the pike, and this is going to be happening for a long time. Hopefully we'll be able to get through the next year, but it's going to certainly be through the next year, that there'll be these restrictions on people and on establishments, businesses, etc. So.
Well, thank you, Fran. That's a good point. As you were describing the things that might be coming along, I was beginning to wonder about, the connectivity that we have with folks like the VNA. And I see how many different kinds of activities they are becoming involved in. And I wonder if there are already essentially some boots on the ground that we may need to better support than we have in the past to handle some of these public health issues. I mean, there's two ways of looking at it, from the medical side and the more the administrative side. And I don't know if this is something where we have, the Mass Association of Health Boards or somebody doing an analysis to see what kind of support do local boards need. Does this Wednesday group, in fact, actually have some publications that sort of lay out, here are the sort of jobs that you're going to have to be taking on that you never did before?
Well, when it comes to COVID, certainly, they are discussing all those things. Everything I just mentioned, they're saying guidance is going to come from the state level down to the local level. And then you have to give that to your community. You being the Board of Health.
Right.
Should be the one. Now, I have all the respect in the world for the VNA and for what they've done through this whole process. But I think that we need more, someone with a master's in public health, with more public health information, that understands public health from not necessarily a medical standpoint, background. And that's why most directors of local health departments have master's degrees in public health, from either Northeastern or from BU or I don't know the rest of it. There's UMass. So that's kind of an individual that I think we need, people that understand epidemiology and statistics and, and their mindset is in giving guidance for emergency preparedness, or emergency situations. I mean, one of the things that I learned today was that, retail stores are going to have to post signs that will say that their workers are wearing masks and that their workers have been trained and that they'll stay at a safe distance. So they have to put this in their stores for us to see.
That was all included in the governor's plan. You could download these documents and
Yes.
and hang up the signs in our veterinary office when we let people back in. Yes.
Yeah,
I've seen those.
right. So who's going to ensure that there's compliance here? I mean, we can't expect the police department to be ensuring this, but who's going to even educate folks? You looked up this, Eileen, because you knew it was
Well, because we have we run a business, so I knew what businesses were, and we are an essential business. So we've been open, so we've been doing all of this ahead of time. But I think that's a really good idea. Let me see if I can look into that, and I can download those documents, and maybe we can email them out to the places that we emailed the face mask requirement things to, so that they know that they have to do that. I think you're making a really good point that people, hopefully they know what they're doing, but I'd have to believe that most of the establishments in town don't know that they have to do that.
Right. I mean, I'll take for example, 4 Kicks. I mean, we sent out these posters to our food, I think, anyone that we permit for food. Is that correct, Betsy?
Yes, and 4 Kicks got one too.
Okay, so okay. But I think as I was driving around town, there were a lot of retail that aren't necessarily food retail, right? And so that people go
like the barber shop or the estheticians and yeah.
So I mean, hopefully they're being vigilant and understanding that if they want to open, they better look at these phased openings so they'll know when they can or they can't. But I guess we should be giving them guidance, and it would be nice if we had someone in the office so Betsy's not getting a million telephone calls and a day. But anyway, I just wanted to make sure that we don't let our budget get cut, if anything, that we could hire a part-time public health director in the future, if not tomorrow. So,
do we have a list of also the retail establishments in town other than just the food establishments, or not?
I don't know.
I do not.
Well, somebody does, I'm sure. Maybe you need to check with Blythe and see what's available.
But it goes beyond this too. Like I said, we've got camps in town.
Right.
Soccer camps that come into town. There's Stony Brook's camp,
Well, that's a good question. Are there?
I don't know, school camps. I don't know if the after school, if the schools run camps in the summertime. I have no idea actually, but that's a whole other problem, whole other issue. So.
Well, youth sports generally is something
Youth
that's
sports, exactly.
is a huge issue.
Baseball, soccer.
Yeah, that was in the governor's phasing plan.
But it's down the road a little ways.
Yes, it is. It's like
Phase
2 or
3 or
3,
something.
but.
So I actually
Yes.
I'm not sure if I had sent this to you earlier or yesterday, but it was from Ron O'Connor from the state. And it's the whole press release and a bunch of different resources regarding, the reopening of Massachusetts, some information on distribution of federal coronavirus relief funds to local cities. So I think we should look into that because actually the $9,000 grant I've received, I've only got about $2,500 left in that for additional nursing services, and I'm sure that's going to go pretty quick.
Mhm.
So,
But that's why I emailed him and said, is there anything,
mhm.
anything else out there besides that,
Yep.
So-
Tom, Donna Jones actually has her hand raised. I think she has a question.
Hello.
Donna,
The selectmen just ended about 10 minutes ago. I came in while Fran was talking, so I didn't catch the beginning of it. But there was talk of trying to get a shared health director between multiple towns. And there was no money in the budget for their salary right now. They have severely cut the proposed budget for our June 24th town meeting. And since we don't know what we're getting from the state, and hopes in the November town meeting that we'll get some of that money and can replenish the budget. they are tracking through Blythe. They said they are tracking our expenses for COVID. We have FEMA for 75% reimbursement of that. And then the state has allocated funds that could help with that other 25%.
Mhm.
And I believe probably Doug covered it in his past letter that he's waiting for Doug from Stony Brook, Doug Williams. He's waiting for direction from Mass Audubon, and had told me he's gonna follow the Norfolk Board of Health direction also.
Does it make sense to invite him to our next meeting? To just discuss what we can do to help out in terms of, well, whatever they need. I imagine that the folks in these various sanctuary offices have got a plan in place. But I know when I was discussing this with some neighbors who all love to go to Stony Brook and were very upset about the fact that they couldn't, I began to wonder about, gee, are there some things they haven't thought of that maybe volunteers or others could help them in, just controlling the crowd and making it possible for places to be open that aren't right now.
I had sent some information to Betsy from an email that I had received from Mass Audubon because I'm a member. So they were talking about what properties were opening. They were typically ones that were in very sparsely populated areas versus the more local ones like Stony Brook. And then they had suggested that, yes, they were going to be talking to the local boards of health about if and when they should reopen.
But they have a list of trails that are open. They're the smaller ones with not a big parking lot. And they're making it very clear there is no bathroom available. So I'm seeing that, gas stations, donut shops, it says no public bathroom. When is it okay to open up a restaurant's bathroom, the gas station's bathroom?
Well, that's what this 4-phase reopening is all about with the governor. So, and I think that Mass Audubon was probably when they opened up their those centers, it was before this 4-phase opening. So I think as time goes on, things will get more in line with each other as far as the governor's office and these private organizations.
But I suspect that the more urban or suburban sanctuaries are going to be among the last, just given the crowd control challenges that they face. And maybe, I don't know, it might make sense to reach out to Doug and just say, hey, look, what are the restrictions that you feel are going to make it difficult to open up even a little bit? I mean, what if you have to have a parking lot that can't be more than half filled before you start having problems with congestion around the trails? It's been a while since I actually did that little boardwalk tour over there at Stony Brook. Just the issue of all the people going the same direction.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that they're doing or could do? Just having a conversation.
Where,
See if it's possible.
on March 13th, they were told you need to shut down your building. Keep your trails open. We kind of watched what happened. The rules there are no pets. People brought in their pets. They left the poop there. They, rode their bicycles there. That's not allowed. And that's why they ended up closing it, because it was free for all. Nobody was following rules. And we were told stay 6 feet apart. Nobody was there to enforce it.
Yeah.
They're down to 2 paid staff only, and it's part of the problem.
Right, but there are a lot of members of the Audubon Society who live in Norfolk.
Right.
Eileen's family is one, mine's another. I'm sure everybody on the screen is. So the idea of developing a volunteer corps, you know, of individuals who are out there for crowd control.
They need that citation book from Chief Stone.
Aha,
This is the perfect opportunity.
yes.
Be on that trail with a volunteer badge and they say, why should I listen to you? I want the wording to
Well,
say,
I didn't
This
just say, I've got the walkie-talkie here, and if I push this button, guess who's going to show up next?
sounds great.
Yeah. Just a thought. Good idea. So,
No,
Well,
it's really good information, Fran, and you're very thoughtful. And you know, having gone to those meetings, I'm busy and doing work on Wednesdays. That's the only reason I can't participate. But there's so much information that is now left to kind of us as this little group. I'm not sure that we can manage that all.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. Okay. So if you think of some way, or any other organizations out there that would like to give us some emergency money to hire a
Is there
director,
any society of retired public health people?
I don't know.
Maybe
If
somebody, yeah, have to think about that.
Okay.
Well, this one can be continued. I would love, by the way, just for the July or the June meeting to invite Doug to come see us. Seem like an okay thing to do?
Yes, absolutely.
All right, let's do that.
And I just want to make one more suggestion that, you know, based on the climate that we're in right now, if necessary, we might call another meeting in 2 weeks to see if, you know, things, how this reopening has gone, and if there's anything that we can support the community with, you know, knowledge, information, whatever. I'm not, I don't mean that we have to schedule one right now, but it's possible I might ask, or one of us might ask, that we come together in a couple of weeks instead of a month. Is that reasonable?
But let's always have that in the back of our mind, that we have a definite date on the 17th of June, but things could happen
Mhm.
that would make it worthwhile to meet earlier than that.
And when is town meeting scheduled for? If we do have one?
The election is the 23rd. Donna, did you say they're doing town meeting on the 24th?
24th, currently scheduled for King Philip High School.
Okay.
And they've reserved June 30th if they need a second date, day 2.
All right.
And also the election. So I don't know, we may have to talk before then to see what the guidelines are that'll come from the state on how you're going to have an election, how you're going to have a town meeting, because people are going to be asking us how that's all going to roll out.
Town Clerk Carol Green said that she is strongly encouraging mail-in voting. The process is already available. They've reduced the hours of the voting time down to 10 to 5 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
The in-person voting.
Mm-hmm. Who's going to clean up the voting booths after someone signs off on their ballot? I mean, these are all logistical things that the state is kind of mandating, but it comes down to each community to, you know, make it all happen. And Matt Hafner has been great.
He has been.
He's amazing, but I don't know what the resources are that he has. So
Yeah, he's taken really good care of us. So we're actually installed a plexiglass window at my counter, all of our counters now.
Yay!
We're in preparation of when we do open, so we have to have a
Mm-hmm.
place there too.
Speaking of elections, Betsy, so right now, is there no one running for the board?
That's correct.
Did Cheryl not return her papers?
She didn't have time to get signatures. That's around the time the whole COVID
Yeah.
thing hit, so.
Is she still interested in being on the board?
I believe she is, so we'd have to do a write-in.
We need to get the troop together to make sure that she has enough write-in ballots.
Okay.
Mhm.
How does that work? What do you mean you have to have enough?
Well, I mean, if there's nobody on the ballot, somebody may decide to get together with some neighbors and run somebody.
Do a write-in
Um, So if
campaign.
we want our person who we know is a good person to be involved, we better make sure we have enough folks aware of who she is so that her name shows up on enough ballots that she is elected.
Well, that's what I'm asking. Do you have to get a certain, could one person sign themselves up, or do you have to have a,
I think you can just stand outside the polling place with a sign that says, vote for me, I'm, a write-in candidate for X position.
but you
So-
don't have to have a certain number of
No.
votes?
Just have to have the majority of votes.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. Okay, that'd be good. Okay.
Anything else?
I'm on the B1 committee, long meetings, contentious.
Sorry.
Yeah, I won't go into that right now. I'm not sure why I'm on this committee, but I will continue to attend until the bitter end.
Then you're off. So,
I'm done with that. Yeah.
Oh, that's tough.
all right.
That was my B1 committee report.
Thank you for sharing. Okay.
I kind of heard the same thing, so.
If there's nothing else on the agenda, is there a motion to adjourn?
Go ahead, Eileen.
I move to adjourn the Board of Health meeting for May 19th, 2020.
And I presume there's a second.
I second the motion.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 We are adjourned.